For literally thousands of years, the story of India has been written in its soil. We're not just talking about an industry here, it's the lifeblood of the nation, completely woven into the fabric of its culture. So let's dive in, get our hands a little dirty, and explore this massive, vital world.
So what's with this number? 2/3? Well, it's pretty staggering when you think about it. That's the slice of India's massive population that's directly involved in agriculture. And this isn't just some dry statistic, right? We're talking about hundreds of millions of lives, all tied to the rhythm of the land and, you guessed it, the fate of the monsoons.
And hey, it's not just about the food on your plate. We've got to think bigger. That cotton in your shirt, the sugar in your coffee, maybe even the tea you're sipping on right now. Yep, it all starts in a field. Agriculture is really the primary activity that fuels so many other industries. It's an absolute powerhouse in global trade.
Okay, but farming in India isn't just one single thing. It's not a monolith. It's evolved over centuries, shaped by the land itself, by technology, and by the culture. So let's break down the major types. We'll look at everything from these ancient practices that just sustain a single family, all the way to massive commercial operations. So to really get a feel for one of the oldest forms of farming, let's talk about a young girl named Rinja. Her family follows this really ancient cycle. They clear some land, they grow crops just to survive, and then they move on. But as this quote kind of hints at, this very old method is starting to run into some very modern problems.
And what Rinja's family does is a classic example of what's called slash and burn agriculture. It's a system that's actually designed to work with nature. A family farms a patch of land until the soil's nutrients are all used up. Then they just move on, allowing the forest to come back and replenish it naturally. So what's the catch? Well, without modern fertilizers and stuff, the productivity is, it's really, really low.
This table really lays it all out, doesn't it? It shows the whole evolution of farming. So you start with primitive subsistence, that's Winja's family, right? Using super basic tools just to get by. Then, as the population grows, you see this shift to intensive subsistence. Here, farmers are using everything they can, irrigation, biochemicals, to squeeze the maximum yield out of these small plots. And then, way over on the other end of the spectrum, you've got commercial farming. That's the whole shebang. High-tech, huge scale, all for the market.
And a perfect example of this commercial approach is the plantation. This is where agriculture and industry literally meet. Just picture it, these vast estates growing a single cash crop, like tea in Assam or coffee down in Karnataka. These are big, capital-intensive operations, and pretty much the entire harvest is destined to become raw material for factories.
All right, now underlying all these different types of farming is this incredibly powerful force, the seasons. You could almost say that agriculture in India dances to this distinct three-part rhythm, and each season brings its own special set of crops to the party. So first up, you've got the Kharif season. This one kicks off with the monsoons, which is perfect for thirsty crops like rice. After that, we move into the Rabi winter season, and that's when we get staples like wheat and peas. And then, squeezed right in between them is this short little summer season called Zayed. That's for fun stuff like watermelon and cucumber. It's a remarkably efficient cycle when you think about it.
And because of this seasonal rhythm, India produces just an incredible diversity of crops. So let's do a quick-fire round on some of the real heavy hitters.
First, of course, is rice. This is the staple food for a huge majority of the population. And get this, after China, India is the world's second largest producer. This one crop is the absolute foundation of daily meals all across the high rainfall parts of the country.
All right, next up, wheat. This is the main food source up in the north and the northwest, and it's the nation's second most important cereal crop overall. So while rice loves the monsoon, wheat is absolutely king during those cooler, drier winters.
Okay, now this is where it gets really interesting. Let's talk about pulses. India is the world's largest producer and the largest consumer. Just let that sink in for a second. What does that actually mean? Well, for a country with such a massive vegetarian population, crops like lentils and peas are an absolutely critical source of protein. This dual role, producing and consuming the most, is a huge cornerstone of the nation's food security.
And finally, we gotta talk about tea. It was actually introduced by the British, but now it's a massive part of Indian agriculture and, let's be honest, the culture. Today, from the beautiful rolling hills of Assam to Darjeeling, India is the second largest tea producer on the entire planet. Wow!
So that brings up a really big question, right? How does a system this ancient support such a massive, modern population? And that question leads us right into our final topic, the absolutely critical need for agricultural reform. The core challenge was pretty simple, really. The old ways just couldn't feed a modern, rapidly growing population. You can't just keep farming the same land for thousands of years without some serious upgrades, both technical and institutional. It was becoming a major roadblock to development.
So, the government responded with decades of reforms. It all started with land reform right after independence. Then, in the 60s and 70s, you had the game-changing green and white revolutions. These massively boosted food grain and milk production. And more recently, the focus has shifted to supporting farmers directly. We're talking crop insurance, better access to credit through things like the Kisan credit card, and even dedicated farming shows on TV and radio.
But you know, reform wasn't just a top-down thing. There was also this really remarkable grassroots movement called Budhan Gramdan. It was started by a spiritual leader named Vinoba Bhave. People called it the Bloodless Revolution because it inspired wealthy landowners to voluntarily, and that's the key word, gift their land to the landless poor.
Which really leaves us with the big question, doesn't it? The story of agriculture in India is this constant dance between the past and the present. It's a blend of ancient wisdom and cutting-edge technology. And as the country keeps growing, the ultimate challenge is going to be this. How do you harmonize those two worlds to create a sustainable, food-secure future for over 1 billion people? It's something to think about.